Hi everyone, today we are working on solving rational equations. So the first thing I want you guys to do is come up with an explanation to the question that I have here. What happens to the denominator when you multiply every numerator by the least common denominator and simplify? So go ahead, take some time to answer these questions. The least common denominator has already been provided for you, and then come up with an explanation. So go ahead and pause the video. We'll come back in just a few seconds. All right, so let's go ahead and see what happens when we multiply these by the least common denominator. So the first one I have here is x plus 8 divided by 8 equals 3/4. Well, I want to multiply every numerator by the least common denominator. So I'm going to take x plus 8 and I'm going to multiply it times 8. And I'm going to take the numerator 3 and I'm going to multiply it times 8. Okay. So on the left side, before I distribute that, I want to see if I can simplify anything. And I actually can. The 8 and the 8 will cancel out. So the only thing left over in the numerator is x plus 8. And there is no denominator on the left side of that equation. On the right side, I can either multiply 8 times 3 and divide it by 4, or I can simplify 8 divided by 4. Well, I'm going to go ahead on this one and simplify 8 divided by 4. That would leave me with 2. So I've still got 2 times 3, which gives me 6. When I did that, what I've noticed is that I have no denominator left. Okay, so let's see if that works on example B as well. So on example B, we have 3m plus 2 divided by 7 equals 6/7. Well, our common denominator on that one is 7. Even though I've written it there, we can see that it's 7. Okay. Now on this one here, I'm going to go ahead and do that same thing and simplify before I do any distribution. So 7 divided by 7 is eliminated. And on the right side of the equation, same thing. So I am left with 3m plus 2 equals 6. Noticing that on this one as well, when I multiplied by the least common denominator, my denominator was eliminated. So the explanation that I have is that multiplying by the LCD will eliminate the denominator. And we prefer that so then we don't have a fraction. Okay. All right, so let's go on and look at a couple different types of examples that we're going to be using when we're solving rational equations. Okay. So there's two types of rational equations that I have here in example 1 and example 2. In example 1, I've got a fraction that is set equal to a fraction. In example 2, I have two fractions being added together and then they're set equal to another fraction. So all these fractions, first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and get rid of that denominator. Okay, so we can multiply both of these by the least common denominator and we'll eliminate that denominator. So example 1, I'm going to show it to you two different ways. Okay, so the first way that I'm going to show it to you is I'm going to multiply both of them by the least common denominator. So the least common denominator in this case would be x and x minus 6. So if I multiply the 7 times x and x minus 6, and I multiply the second fraction in the numerator, x times x minus 6. Now just the numerator is being multiplied, not the denominator. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now and simplify. Is there anything that I can cancel out on this left side of this equation? Well, there is. I can cancel out the x minus 6 and the x minus 6. So that all that remains there is 7 times x, which gives me 7x. Now, on the right side of the equation, is there anything we can eliminate from the numerator to the denominator? Anything that we can simplify? Yes, the x and the x are eliminated. Now we can distribute that. 4 times x gives me 4x. 4 times -6 gives me -24. Now we can go ahead and finish solving that. Bring the 4x over, so subtract 4x from both sides. We have 3x equals -24. Divide both sides by 3, and we get x equals -8. Now that's my solution if and only if -8 was not an excluded value. So if I look back at my excluded values, looking right up here, I see that x could not equal 6 and x could not equal 0. So either way, this one definitely works. Okay, -8 was not an excluded value, so that is a solution. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and show you a second method of doing this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this to show you a different way. Okay. Excuse me. Actually, I'm just going to write it right underneath and then I'll erase it from there. So let's just go ahead and rewrite example 1 here. So this is the second option here. So the second option is if we have 7 over x minus 6 is equal to 4x, so the exact same problem. Okay. When I have a fraction that equals a fraction, I can go ahead and use cross multiplication. So I can do 7 times x and 4 times x minus 6. That is actually the same thing as multiplying by the common denominator. However, this only works when we have a fraction that equals a fraction. So this will not work on example 2. So on the example 1, 7 times x gives me 7x. And then I have 4 times x minus 6, which gives me 4x minus 24. Subtract 4x from both sides, then we have 3x equals -24. Divide both sides by -24 or by 3, and we get x equals -8. Okay. Both times we get the same solution. Again, just making sure that -8 is not an excluded value. All right. So it's easier when you have a fraction equals a fraction just to use cross multiplication, but multiplying the numerators by that least common denominator is going to work for us as well. Okay. All right, so let's go over to example 2. Now we have a fraction plus a fraction, so we cannot just cross multiply. In this case, we are going to multiply everything by that least common denominator. The least common denominator in this case is 4b squared. So I'm going to multiply this numerator times 4b squared, multiply this numerator times 4b squared, and multiply this numerator times 4b squared. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and simplify what I can. 4b squared times 4b, or divided by 4b squared, cancels out. And this next one, 4b squared divided by 2b squared. Well, the b squareds cancel out. 4 divided by 2 would leave me with 2. Same thing here, b squareds would cancel out. 4 divided by 2 would leave me with 2. So for the first fraction, I am left over with b plus 6 plus 3 times 2 makes 6 is equal to 2 times b is 2b, and 2 times +4 is +8. Okay. I just used distribution with that one. So I did 2 times b and 2 times 4. Just like here, I did 2 times 3. All right, now we're going to go ahead and simplify by combining like terms, and then we're going to solve. So I've got b plus 12 is equal to 2b plus 8. Subtract b from both sides, so I've got 12 is equal to b plus 8. Subtract 8 from both sides, and I get 4 equals b. As long as 4 was not an excluded value, this is a solution. So when I go back to look at my excluded values right here, all I had was that b could not equal 0. So that one there is a possible solution. Okay. All right. So let's go now then and look at one that has all the steps listed so that you can write all these steps down for like the examples that we've done here. Okay. All right, so here we go. On example 3, I've already written it out for you and I've listed the steps. So in this first one, I have 1m plus 1 divided by m plus 3m plus 12 divided by m squared plus 5m equals 7m plus 56 divided by m squared plus 5m. Now, I found the least common denominator to be m times m plus 5. This is so important. Back with that review that we did when we first started rationals, we needed to look for the GCF. So m squared and 5m both have an m in common. So we could factor out an m. So we would be left with m times m plus 5 here as well. So that's where I got the least common denominator from. Okay. All right, so once we have that least common denominator, step 2 says we're going to multiply each numerator by the least common denominator and then simplify it. So I've listed the least common denominator above every numerator. So let's go ahead and simplify each one. So looking at the first fraction, what do they have in common? Well, they both have m in common, so we can cancel those out. Then on the second one, they both have m in common from the numerator and denominator, and they also have m plus 5 in common. So that whole piece that we put up there is the LCD, and the denominator have completely canceled out. We like that. That makes our lives a little easier. Looking that after the equal sign, the m's cancel out, and the m plus 5 cancels out. So to rewrite this, for the first fraction, I'm left with m plus 5 plus 3m plus 12 equals 7m plus 56. Now we're going to go ahead and combine like terms. So m, that's not the one I meant to grab, m plus 3m equals 4m. 5 plus 12 equals 17 equals 7m plus 56. Now what I would do is subtract 4m from both sides and subtract 56 from both sides. I've got negative 39 equals 3m. Divide both sides by 3 and I get m equals negative 13. Now, as long as one of my excluded values is not negative 13, this is a solution. Okay, so step 4 says just check for the restricted values. In our case, m could not be 0, m could not be negative 5, but m could be negative 13. All right, so that is it for this video. Your guys' practice is on this worksheet. It is also found on the Canvas page. I want you to do examples 1 through 5 and to do examples 7 through 11. 6 and 12 are bonus questions. Okay. If you get all the others done and you get these ones here, I will offer 1 extra credit point, summative extra credit point, if you do everything else and then add 6 and 12 to it.